Today's daf, Ezras Hashem, is Masechta Avodah Zarah Daf Mem Daled, and we are holding Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis. Okay, so we begin Daf Mem Gimel Amid Beis by the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the Mishnah is going on the previous Mishnah, and we learned yesterday in the previous Mishnah that if somebody finds a keli with an Avodah Zarah on it, you have to throw it into the Yam HaMelech. Okay, and how do you know if it's worshipped for Avodah Zarah? It has a certain type of picture on the keli that indicates that it was used for an Avodah Zarah. But Rabbi Yossi says he gives you another way to get rid of this Avodah Zarah. He says shoichik, you just grind it down, v'zayreya leruach, and throw it to the wind. Oi, but if you want to get rid of it whole, mataliyam, then you throw it into the Yam HaMelech. But he gave you another advice of how to get rid of this Avodah Zarah is just grind it down and throw it into the wind. So Amr Loi, so they said to him, Afu nasa zevel. By doing so, it's becoming fertilizer because you throw it into the wind and it fertilizes your field because the metal chips that you grounded it up now can become used as fertilizer. Shenema you're not allowed to use, you're not allowed to benefit anything from something that's consecrated. That's something that's asur bahana that you're not allowed to benefit from. So the Chacham said that's not a good idea. Rabbi Yossi held it is a good idea because when a person uses it as fertilizer, that's not the only thing that's causing the plant to grow. It's of course the earth causing the plant to grow, and therefore it's this fertilizer plus the earth. It's zev goyrim. It's both of them causing the plant to grow. So then, even if the fertilizer was from Avodah Zarah, it would be permitted. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. But Chachamim are very strict, and they says that no, if you're using fertilizer to help a plant grow, if the fertilizer came from an Avodah Zarah that was grounded down, then it is not permitted to use it. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. So we see that this concept, that Rabbi Yossi's advice of just grinding something down and throwing it into the wind, is a way to get rid of Avodah Zarah. So the Chachamim disagreed with that. So the Rabbi Yossi says, Amalhem Rabbi Yossi says, how could you say that? The pasuk says, Ve'es chataschem atem asher asisem eso egel lakachti esraf oisu be'esh ve'ekos oisu tachain hetiv ad asher dakl ofa v'ashal chasafari el anachal yori bin hahar. Basically, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. He grounded up the egel when he came down from Har Sinai and saw the Jews doing the egel, and he grounded it up, and he took the dust. Presumably, some of the dust fell on some of the land that the Jews were growing produce on. So we see that that's not a problem grinding the Avodah Zarah up. Amrloi, so the Chacham said to him, to Rabbi Yossi Misham Rai, is that a proof? That basically Moshe Rabbeinu did not throw away the dust of the egel and that he grounded up. He took the entire dust and put it into water and had the Jews drink from that water to check, to see, to determine who served the egel and who did not serve the egel by drinking those water like a soita drinks those water. So he didn't spread the ashes, the ashes of the egel all around, or the dirt of the egel all around. He took them and threw it all into the water. So now the Rabbi Yossi says, okay, let's go further into Nach. Omalam Rabbi Yossi says, but like Farnemet says by the king Asa, he was trying to get rid of Avodah Zarah in his kingdom. And then it pasuk says, V'gam macha ein imoy, he took away his grandmother, Esira Megvira took away from her power, because this grandmother was causing Avodah Zarah. She was creating Avodah Zarah. Asher also, she was the one that made the peletzis. She made for the Asherah tree a peletzis. For Avodah Zarah, she made a peletzis. So she got fired when her grandson his grandson Asa, who was a tzaddik, took over the melucha. And what did Asa do? Vayodak, he grounded it up. By Yisrael, and he burned it. Benachal Kidron in Nachal Kidron. So we see in the valley of Kidron. So a valley is not with water. In the valley, he grounded up the Avodah Zarah and then spread it into the Nachal Kidron, into the valley. So we see you're allowed to grind something up and then spread it out, even though it could be potentially used as fertilizer. So that's what is Rabbi Yossi's proof. Amaloi. So the Chachamim answered Rabbi Yossi Misham Rayas, and that's a proof. Nachal Kidron ain't a magadol smochan. The Nachal Kidron, the valley of Kidron, doesn't. You can't grow any produce on that. You can't grow any plants on that valley. Says the Gemara V'loi. That's not. You can't grow anything in Nachal Kidron. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Elu ve'elu misarvin ba'ama. The bloods that were used for sacrifices somehow went out of the Beis Hamikdash after being poured on the side of the Mizbeach HaChitzain. They both went out in a pipe that led outside the Beis Hamikdash, and all that blood, the extra blood, went to Nachal Kidron, and v'nimkarin leganonim, and they would sell that blood lezevel, so people can buy it and use it for fertilizer. I guess presumably people who are planting in the Nachal Kidron would have to buy it off the Beis Hamikdash, the bloods, to be used so that they can benefit from the bloods and use it as fertilizer in the fields. My alam behen. If they don't buy it and they just use it without paying, they did a me'ilah. So we see from there that there were farmers around in the Nachal Kidron that used to plant things. So how could you tell me that Nachal Kidron was a place that did not grow any plantations there? Answers the Gemara, Makaimis yesh by. There's different places in the Nachal Kidron. It's a big area. Yesh mokom megadol tzmachim. Yesh mokom she'ein megadol tzmachim. There's some places that it grew plants. You can grow vegetation there. And there's other places where you can't grow vegetation there. And the places where they don't grow vegetation there, that's where Asa grounded up the Avodah Zarahs in his time and then threw it into the wind. My pilat mi pilatsto, my mi piletzis. What piletzis? What does it mean piletzis? That Asa's grandmother made it piletzis for the Asherah tree, for the Avodah Zarah tree. So the Gemara says a fascinating thing. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, this is what she did. She did an unbelievable, strange type of degradation to the Avodah Zarah, a mocking to the Avodah Zarah. In other words, but she meant it. Kedetani Rabbi Yosef taught us. Kimin zachos asla. She made like a male organ coming out of the Asherah tree. And she would have relations with that fake male organ coming out of the Avodah Zarah tree. Anyway, the Gemara continues and says, Rabbi Yosef says, how could you tell me that that grinding Avodah Zarah up and throwing it into the wind is not a good idea? The pasuk says, Vikitas nechash nechosha shasha Moshe. Crushed or ground up the copper snake that Moshe Rabbeinu made. People were using it and worshiping it, the snake that Moshe Rabbeinu made, a special snake that Moshe made to heal people. So in the time of Chizkiah, he grounded it up. So we see that you could grind up Avodah Zarah, because that's what it is. He grounded it up. Probably he spread the ashes all over. Answers the Gemara, Amrullah Misham Raya. So the Chachamim says that a proof. The pasuk says, "Vayem Hashem l'Moshe asay lecha Sarah." Who really owned this snake? Lecha, Mishal Lecha. Moshe Rabbeinu paid for that snake. So if Moshe Rabbeinu paid for that snake, vein adam oisad davar sheni shaloi. So they cannot answer it and make it into Avodah Zarah if it was a Moshe Rabbeinu snake. You could only make your own possessions into an Avodah Zarah, but you can't make somebody else's possessions into Avodah Zarah. And so if the people were worshiping the Avodah Zarah of the snake, they didn't make it into an Avodah Zarah because it really belongs to Moshe. V'hasam, and the Gemara continues, he didn't have to ground it down. Chizkiyahu did not have to grind it down because it wasn't an Avodah Zarah. Even the chaz of the Kotoy saw Basrei, since he saw the Jews who are being fooled by it, Amad v'kitasai, he said he's going to crush it. He's going to grind it down. But he didn't. That wasn't something that he needed to do. So Rabbi Yossi said like this. It says by David HaMelech, when he conquered the Plishtim ran away. By Yazu Shomat Satzabeim, they left their avodah zaras on the battlefield. Vayiso'ein David va'anashiv. And David, according to this understanding, Vayiso'ein means he scattered it. In other words, he ground down the avodah zaras. Omai mashim dahai v'yiso'ein David lishn zeruzehi. Where do you see that the word v'yiso'ein means that David HaMelech scattered them? Tanya, we learned in Brayshas, the Targum Rav Yosef always explained this pasuk: Tizreim v'ruach tisaim, u'mitargiminin tizreinun, scatter them, v'ruach tiltalinun, and the wind will carry it away. So by Yisrael David means David did something to the Avodah Zarah, so it was carried away by the wind. Presumably, he grounded it down. So we see that there's a way to get rid of Avodah Zarah by grinding it down. Amor Loi, so the Chachamim said, Misham Rai, is that a proof? Hareyo Oimid, the pasuk in Divrei Yomim, which repeats the story, it says Vayisrufu B'Eish, that he burned it in fire. Midloi Ksiv, since it doesn't say Vayisru'ein, he burned them and then scattered them, or Shmami No, from here we prove Vayisru'ein Mamish, that in the pasuk, when it says they left their avodah zaros in Malachim, in Shmuel Beis, Vayisu'ein David Anashim, he carried them. He actually didn't even grind them down. So now we have a pasuk in Shmuel Beis saying that David HaMelech took the avodah zaros, and then in the pasuk in Divrei Yomim says he burned the avodah zaros. So Mikomakom Kashe Kroya Adadi, how do you reconcile those two psukim? And says the Gemara, Kid Rav Huna Rami. Rav Huna asked the contradiction. The Yomed David, the pasuk says, "Yomed David Yisrafu B'Eish." First, it says David burnt the avodah zarah in fire. Uksiv in the pasuk says Vayiso'eim. He was able to take it home. So loy kasha, it's not difficult. Kan koydem shabo Itai Giti. Before he had a guy called Itai, the Itai is his name. Mevatel that avodah zarah, so then he had to burn it. Kan, when he after Itai Gite came, so he was a goy. He was able to nullify that avodah zarah. And we see that David HaMelech had this goy that always, when he captured some avodah zarah in battle, he was able to have this goy being mevatel the avodah zarah. The Ksiv, in another battle against Rabbis B'nai Amoin, the pasuk says, "Vayikach asas teres malkam." David HaMelech took the crown of their avodah zarah, me'al roshei, from the head of the avodah zarah, umishkala kikar zav, and it weighed a kikar zav, which is an enormous amount of pounds. So, and he put it on his head. Umishari, how could David HaMelech take the crown of the avodah zarah and use it for his own crown? Isur anohu, you're not allowed to benefit from the avodah zarah. Rav Nachman explained, Ite ubo ubitlei. David HaMelech had this goy that worked for him, and that whenever he encountered an avodah zarah, this Itai Giti was mavatal the avodah zarah. Now the pasuk, we just finish off loose ends over here. You say David HaMelech had a crown that weighed kikar zav on his head. Bishkala kikar zav. Then how was David HaMelech put it onto his head? No human head could hold up so many pounds in weight. So how did he wear this crown? Amar Rav Yehuda, Rav explained, it doesn't mean he actually wore it. The pasuk means that it was worthy to be placed on the head of David. Rav Yosef Bar Chanina says, Evan she'avis hoiseba dahavas darabah. Here's a modern invention. It had a magnet inside the crown, plus a magnet maybe above, where David HaMelech sat in his chair, and so to speak, it was hovering over David HaMelech's head. Didn't weigh down because the magnet held it suspended over the head of David HaMelech. So that was interesting. Rabbi Elazar says, not that the crown weighed a kikar zahav. No, Evan Yakara Haisabah, they had one precious ruby or stone in the crown, Sheshava kikar zahav, was worth many pounds of gold. But not that the crown itself weighed so much money, weighed so heavy. Now the pasuk explains the pasuk in Tehillim that David says, I deserve this reward, because I kept your commandments. David HaMelech is saying, because I kept your commandments, that's why you gave me a reward of having this special crown. My kama. What did David HaMelech mean to say? Hachi kama. This is what David HaMelech says. Because I kept your commandments, this proved that I was worthy to be the king. My edusah, what was how did the crown, the special crown, prove that David HaMelech was worthy to be the king? David HaMelech placed it right, on his head, over the place where you put the tefillin shel rosh. V'hoy lam toin, it fit. So he had this perfectly fitting crown. So that showed everybody, hey, that David HaMelech should be accepted as your king. Even though if you learn Tanakh, it wasn't always so simple with David HaMelech being accepted as the king. Says the Gemara of Aboya Lanuche Tefillin, David HaMelech needed to put on tefillin, so how could he always wear the crown? There's a place on the head that you can put two tefillins, one in back of each other. So maybe the crown ended a little early, fit his head properly, but then he had a place where he can put a tefillin there. Vayitzias ben Hamelach v'idin olavas nezer v'eso edis. Nezer kalila edis amar Yehuda amarav edis u lebeis David shekol haroyu l'malchus halamta v'chol shein haroyu l'malchus ein halamta. So this crown lasted throughout David's reign and then afterwards, and if whoever was going to take over from David would put on this crown. If he was worthy, then the crown fit him. If he was not worthy to be the king, the crown did not fit him. And that's why the pasuk says, V'adoniya ben Chagis misnasei leimor ani amloich. David HaMelech had this son that was doing a coup, and he was trying to take over the kingdom. And he said, I'm going to be now the king. Amar Yehuda Amarav shemisnasei laholmei. He tried to lift himself up to fit into the crown. This crown did not fit Adoniyahu. So we knew that he was not worthy to be the king. And one last pasuk that describes the people who surrounded Adoniyahu. The Yaslei Trechav uProshim. He had chariots and guides, and he had these special like Navy SEALs. V'chamishim ish ratzum lafanas. There were 50 people running before him. Ma'ruv usayu. Just having 50 people run before you, what makes them special? They were like his Secret Service agents. Tana, we learned that they all did a surgery to remove their spleens, and they shaved down the bottom, the soles of their feet. So this made them be able to run long distances and be able to not be concerned because I guess they cut away the nerves on the bottom of their feet. They were able to run long distances on even rough surfaces. So that it was Adoniyahu who tried to make himself the king, because of course he was, it didn't work out for him. Again, that was the end of the Gemara talking about the crown of David HaMelech. Now we go to our Mishnah. Mem Dalet Amebez. Says the Mishnah, Sha'al Proiklis ben Ploisvis es Rabbi Gamliel. Proiklis, the philosopher, a guy, asked Rabbi Gamliel ba'akoy. Now, in Akkoy. Now, what did Rabbi Gamliel, who's living in Akkoy, he went to this bathhouse in Akkoy. In the courtyard of the bathhouse, there was this Avodah Zarah called Aphrodite. So, Proclus happened to be in the bathhouse at the same time as Rabbi Gamliel. So, he was washing the bathhouse. That Aphrodite, that there was a statue of the Aphrodite. It's probably representative of one of the planets. That was in the courtyard of the bathhouse, which you could actually see as you're, doing your business in the bathhouse. Amalei, so the Proclus asked Rabbi Gamliel, how could you be here? You're not allowed to benefit. So you're bathing in the bathhouse, which beautifies the Aphrodite. The Aphrodite is the main reason you're here, and the merchatz is beautifying the Aphrodite. So how could you be here? It's called the noi of Avodah Zarah, something that beautifies the Avodah Zarah. The necklace of an Avodah Zarah is aser. So this is the merchatz. This bathhouse beautifies that statue of Aphrodite. So Rabbi Gamliel said, "Ein meshivim b'merchatz." We're not allowed to talk Torah in a bathhouse. When he went out, he told this philosopher, this Pericles, three reasons why I'm allowed to be here. Ani loy basi b'gvula, he ba b'gvuli. I didn't come in its path. He came in my path. In other words, this this was a merchatz. This bathhouse was built prior to the Aphrodite. They added the Aphrodite Avodah Zarah later on. So the merchatz was a bathhouse used by many people, the rabbin. Now you're going to put an Avodah Zarah there to try to aser the merchatz. Doesn't work that way. Ein Ayman, and even if you did, Ein Ayman Nasa Merchatz Noil Aphrodite. We don't call them bathhouse something that beautifies the Aphrodite. Ala Ayman, we say Nasa Aphrodite Noil Merchatz. The Aphrodite beautifies the Merchatz. In other words, what makes people want to use this Merchatz over another merchatz, another bathhouse? The answer is the Aphrodite. People come there, worship the idol, and then go to the bathhouse. It's almost like you have a shopping mall where they put rides there, like American Dream Ball. You come to the rides so that you'll be able to do your shopping. So people went to the Aphrodite, and once there, that brought them into the merchatz. So the Aphrodite was the beautifying piece of the merchatz. And Davar Acha, another reason why this is not Aser, because this is not really an Avodah Zarah, because people are getting naked in front of the Avodah Zarah. They're going into the hot water of the merchatz, and some of them actually could release semen into the merchatz, and some people are urinating there. So they're automatically being mevatel the Avodah Zarah. Davar Acha, if they give you a lot of money, you'll never go into your Avodah Zarah or a naked ubal keri, and sometimes you can release semen, sometimes you urinate in front of in the Avodah Zarah. That's what people are doing in a merchatz, and the Avodah Zarah is just right in the courtyard. So this is a disgusting thing to do in front of the Avodah Zarah. You would never do such a thing in front of Avodah Zarah. Zu Amedis al Piv. This is standing by the water pipe where the water goes into the sewer. Everybody's urinating in front of the Avodah Zarah. It says we're not allowed to do anything, have anything to do with their idols, their gods. If you read it with respect, also then a Jew cannot benefit. If you don't conduct it as it is a deity, mutter, then it's permitted for a Jew to benefit from. And since you're not conducting yourself in a respectful way in front of this Aphrodite, it's an Avodah Zarah that everybody nullified. And therefore, I'm permitted to use the merchatz. So that was Rabbi Gamliel's answer of how he was used to the merchatz. So the Gemara deals with the problem. How was Rabbi Gamliel allowed to tell this guy that I can't talk Torah in the merchatz? Even to say those words is talking Torah in the merchatz. How is he allowed to do that? In every place, you're allowed to think about Torah. From a bathroom or a bathhouse, you're not allowed to even think about the Torah. Certainly, you're not allowed to say anything Torah-dig. Are you going to tell me that he spoke in the English language? He didn't speak Hebrew. Doesn't matter. It's Torah. Things that are secular, like baseball scores, mutar leimer b'lashon kodesh. You could say it in a bathhouse in Hebrew. Dvarim shel kodesh, Torah words, also leimer b'lashon kodesh. You're not allowed to say it in a secular language if it's halacha. So the Gemara says, Tana, we learned in the Brisa, kishi yotza amalei meshiva merchatz. We have the wrong gears in our Mishnah. You have to take away the vav, and basically you read it like this: amalei ein meshivin b'merchatz kishiyotza amalai. When Rabbi Gamliel left the bathhouse, he told him, I couldn't answer you because we were in a bathhouse. In the bathhouse, Rabbi Gamliel was totally silent, didn't answer the question. Says the Gemara, Amar Rab Chama bar Yosef b'Rebbe. Rab Chama bar Yosef said that Rabbi Ishaya said, Tshuva Genuva Heshiva Rabbi Gamliel Isa Hegnim. Rabbi Gamliel didn't answer correctly to that goy. And I, Rechama bar Yosef, I disagree, Rabbi Shaya. There's nothing wrong with the teretz. So the Gemara explains, my Gnufte, what did Rabbi Ashaya find wrong in Rabbi Gamliel's answer? The Ka'amalai, because Rabbi Gamliel said, Zu Amedis al Piv, V'chol Adam Mashma Fnei. Rabbi Gamliel says this is not an Avodah Zarah because everybody's urinating in front of the Avodah Zarah. So that ruins it. It's no more an Avodah Zarah. So the Gemara says, V'chi Mashtim B'fnei Ma'ihava. Just because you urinate in front of a Avodah Zarah, does it lose its status as of an Avodah Zarah? Rava said, worse, P'ar Yechia, Shemafir L'fnei B'chol Yoyim B'nei Batal. There's a Avodah Zarah called Pa'ar, where people defecate and in front of the Avodah Zarah, and it doesn't become batal. So how could what's Ram Gamliel telling you? Oh, this is Aphrodite is not an Avodah Zarah because people urinate there. So what? That doesn't make it not an Avodah Zarah. I Rabbi Yosef disagree with Rabbi Shaya. It's not a bad teret. Zu Avodah Bekach, Zu ein Avodah Bekach. The Avodah Zarah of Pa'ar, that's the way you serve the Avodah Zarah, by defecating in front of it. This Aphrodite was not a type of service that you're supposed to urinate in front of it. And if people are urinating in front of it, it loses its name Avodah Zarah. Amar Abaya says, G'nuv Asim Ahacham, the Kamale. Rabbi Chomer Bar Yosef Rabbi Shaya said that this is the problem with Rabbi Gamliel's teretz. Ani loy basi b'gvula, v'hi ba b'gvula. In other words, the merchatz came first, and then the Aphrodite came later. So v'hi ba b'gvula ma'hava. So it's mashma. We can derive that if they built the Aphrodite and then built the merchatz, it would still be good. Then it would be aser. Why would it be aser if they built the Avodah Zarah and then built the merchatz? But now we learned in the Mishnah, Avodah Zarah sheyesh la merchatz. Let's say you have an Avodah Zarah, it was built there first, and then they built the bathhouse, agina. You're allowed to go there and use the merchatz, and don't say thank you to the priest there. But you're not allowed to benefit from there if you're going to say thank you to the priest. But we see you're allowed to use the merchatz if you're just not going to say thank you to the Avodah Zarah. So what was the problem? Rabbi Gamliel says the Avodah Zarah came second. First was the merchatz, and then came the Avodah Zarah. If the Avodah Zarah came first, and then the merchatz, Rabbi Gamliel is implying that would be aser. Why? If Rabbi Gamliel is not going to say thank you for letting me use the merchatz, so then it wouldn't be aser. And I say no. If Rabbi Gamliel would use the merchatz that came after the Avodah Zarah, that means they made the Avodah Zarah and then they had a merchatz. The fact that Rabbi Gamliel uses it, even if he didn't say thank you to the priests there, it'd still be aser, because they would benefit to see Rabbi Gamliel. The thank you is that Rabbi Gamliel is using such of a person is using their merchatz. So that wouldn't. That's why Rabbi Gamliel said. Rabbi Gamliel implied that if the Avodah Zarah came first, Rabbi Gamliel would not be allowed to use the merchatz. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimi bar Chiya amar Gnuvasa mechacha. Rabbi Gamliel says this was the problem. Again, people urinate in front of this Avodah Zarah. That is mabatal the Avodah Zarah. But now, didn't we learn in the Mishnah? Rak b'fnei, hishta b'fnei, gera v'zarak ba'asatzaya, hareze eni b'tela. If you have an Avodah Zarah, someone spits in front of the Avodah Zarah, if a guy urinates in front of Avodah Zarah, of this Avodah Zarah, it's ena b'tela. It doesn't become nullified. So how did Rabbi Gamliel say, oh, it's nullified because people are urinating there? That doesn't nullify an Avodah Zarah. I can say ena genuva. That's not that doesn't ruin what Rabbi Gamliel meant to say. That mission is talking about you spit in front of the Avodah Zarah, or the guy urinated or threw excrement at the Avodah Zarah. He was angry at the Avodah Zarah. Then he'll make up when things work out, and then say, "Okay, you're back to Avodah Zarah." But over here by the merchatz, kol shata v'shata b'zuzulei kaima. It's always staying in a place where people are always urinating there. So therefore, it becomes a bottle, the Avodah Zarah. If it's a one-time thing that the goy urinate in front of Avodah Zarah, still doesn't take it away from being an Avodah Zarah, because maybe the guy was just angry, and that's why he did such a thing. But here, this Aphrodite is right in front of where people are urinating all the time. Rabba Baba Ula Ama Gnuvasim Hacha. This was Rabbi Gamliel had a problem. Rabbi Gamliel's words were not straight. People don't say that the merchatz is a beautifies the Aphrodite. They always say the Aphrodite beautifies the merchatz. Says the Gemara, if let's say people would say the merchatz becomes for the Aphrodite a noi, if the merchatz can become a noi for the Aphrodite, that means they built the Aphrodite, and then they're building a merchatz to beautify the Aphrodite. Does that make a merchatz aser? Just because you're saying, I'm taking this and using it as to beautify the Avodah Zarah. Does that work by Avodah Zarah? It doesn't aser it. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, by Zel Avodah Zarah. Person says, my house is an Avodah Zarah. Koizel Avodah Zarah. This cup will be for the Avodah Zarah. He's dedicating it. In other words, I'm dedicating my house for the Avodah Zarah. I'm dedicating a cup, my becher for the Avodah Zarah. Lo maklum. It doesn't work. Shein hegdish la'avodah zarah. You can't consecrate something for avodah zarah. You can say this belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. My house should be dedicated hegdish to the Beis Hamikdash. Belong to the Beis Hamikdash. That works when it comes to holy things. For avodah zarah, you can't say, "Oh, my house now belongs to the avodah zarah." So how could you say that this merchatz now belongs to the Aphrodite? It doesn't work. I say that it's still a good teretz what Rabbi Gamliel said. By saying that merchatz belongs to Aphrodite, it doesn't work. Merchatz still is not a merchatz; it's still mutter, but but it's still a beautifying of the Avodah Zarah. In other words, you may not be able to consecrate it, but you're allowed to. But once you building it, it becomes an automatically beautifies the Avodah Zarah. So if the Aphrodite came first and then they built the merchatz, then Rabbi Gamliel would have had a problem going to that merchatz because the fact that he's going, of course, is already a toiva, doing something, giving thanks to the Avodah Zarah and benefiting them and showing that he's appreciative of them. So then he would be also to use that avodah zarah, but nevertheless that merchatz. But nevertheless, Rabbi Gamliel had all sorts of reasons why he was permitted to use that merchatz. Okay, have a good Shabbos.